is Fantasy Football Picks and Bets presented by Prize Picks. Use code MMN when you deposit at prizepicks.com to get a match deposit of up to $100. Meaning, if you deposit $100, you will have $200 to play with on prizepicks.com. Check out the fantasy props, the overs and the unders. Coming up momentarily, Pete Overzet is going to have the DraftKings first look and research for you for the week to get started, to get your plans on the go, to go win some of that money. Plus, I do want to let you know that if you go to runthesims.com/Mayo, you'll get a discount on the DFS optimizer, the single game showdown simulator, and you can run everything, including your own custom projections, up to 10,000 times to see the distribution of floor and ceiling and where those median projections are going to be. I highly recommend it. runthesims.com/Mayo. Enough of me. Let's get to Pete.
All right, it is early on Monday morning, and there is no other way I would rather start my week than by pouring over the Week 9 salaries. This is a very forward-thinking show. Before Monday Night Football has even been played, we are on to Week 9, needing to pick up the pieces for a bad Week 8 GPP slate for me, but we're always pressing forward. I'm Peter Overzet here on the Mayo Media Network. We are here every week to review the salaries as usual. There are the caveats, lots changes. We have stuff with injury news pending. We see the total shift, projection shift, all kinds of stuff that can, flip the slate on its head, as we saw on Sunday with Calvin Ridley and Jamal Williams being ruled out at the last minute. This kind of stuff happens. It changes the slate dynamics, but I do think it is very important to get familiar with the pricing on the slate. It kind of gives us a framework to know what's possible, what can we be doing with our lineups, and that is what we are going to do today. I am going to pull up the salaries here on DraftKings. And just to give us kind of a high level overview of what we're working with, we have 4 teams on bye this week. We have the Detroit Lions, who, God, get them on bye after what they did to us yesterday in that Eagles game. We have the Seahawks on bye, so no more opportunities to go back to the Geno Smith premium double stack with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf after that hit in Week 8. We have the Bucs on bye, which is a big one. They have been a source of many fantasy points of late. Rob Gronkowski also dealing with back spasms, so that extra week will be helpful for him. And then we have the Washington football team on bye as well. Antonio Gibson yesterday losing a lot of carries to Jarrett Patterson, and I believe that's due to the shin injury. So also the bye coming at a good time for him. As far as the kind of games we're looking at this week, only seeing 3 games right now with a projected total over 50. It's the Vikings-Ravens game, which should be good. And then we have 2 really good 4 p.m. games. We have Chargers-Eagles and Packers-Chiefs. Of course, the Chiefs play tonight, so that will be an interesting one to see how their performance potentially affects sentiment and projections heading into this week. But those 2 games look pretty good. Guessing it will be a good late swap week, just having 2 big total games there in the 4 p.m. hour. So let's jump right into it. I'll try to touch on any relevant injuries when I can as we're going through these positions. Right up here at quarterback, we do have a pretty loaded quarterback slate. Now getting Patrick Mahomes back on the main slate. Of course, we have Josh Allen up at 8,200 against the Jags. I assume he's going to project very well, as we saw Geno Smith throwing for a ton on the Jags yesterday, and I have to assume that Josh Allen is going to have himself a day. Kyler Murray has been an interesting one of late. His price just coming down a smidge. He just really isn't running as much as he was at the beginning of the season. Early on in the season, he was getting more kind of designed rush attempts. Not as much going in the ground game for him now. Only 11 fantasy points on Thursday night against the Packers. You have to wonder if that keeps his ownership down. These divisional matchups are always tricky. Sometimes they implode. The teams know each other well, and sometimes they're like the Colts-Titans game in Week 8, where they just massively shoot out. So I could see this being a game that yields a decent amount of fantasy points. So Kyler as a contrarian option there could be pretty good. I also, we mentioned this Chiefs Packers game. So Aaron Rodgers is very much going to be in the conversation at 7,500. It'll be interesting to see what the deal is with his weapons. Of course, MVS, Alan Lazard and Devontae Adams all missed that Thursday night game, and it'll be interesting to see if they're back or not. Rodgers is going to be without Robert Tonyan regardless. So his weapons are diminished, but that should still be a pretty nice game for fantasy. Of course, we have Lamar Jackson at home here at 7,300. He's going to project extremely well. Even though even though Jalen Hurts kind of burned people, myself included, in week 8 with this 11-point fantasy game, really his worst game of the year by far. He had been over 20 points in every other game. I think he is going to project well in this game that has a really nice total of 51. Also in that same game, Justin Herbert, the Eagles secondary has not been anything to write home about this year. So I think Herbert is going to be in play. As we get a little bit further down here, again, Kirk Cousins in that game against Baltimore. I don't love the spot on the road in Baltimore for him, but just considering the total of that game, and we know that the Vikings are willing to chuck it when they get down. So if we assume a negative game script, we could get a lot of garbage time Kirk there. One other thing to just monitor is Justin Jefferson was in and out of the game last night with an injury. We haven't heard any reports as of Monday morning, but something to keep an eye on there as well. And we'll hit on that in the other positions. If we want to get cheap, there are some options down here. We do have Daniel Jones playing tonight. If he were to have a good game against the Chiefs, I assume this $5,600 price tag is going to start to look pretty attractive at home against Las Vegas. I don't mind that one. A couple other ones down here, if we really want to kind of get gross, we'll see if Dak Prescott plays again, or if he's going to rest a little bit more. I mean, Cooper Rush did not look bad last night. He was making nice throws to Amari Cooper. He finishes with 22 fantasy points there. So Cooper Rush at 5,200 at home versus Denver, if Dak doesn't go, I think is definitely in play. Let's see what they have Dak's salary at. They do have Dak at 6,900. Obviously, if he is going, that's going to look pretty nice as well. So I think both of the Cowboys QBs will be in play at their price tag, depending on which one starts. And then I think I should also mention Teddy Bridgewater. Bridgewater now gets Jerry Jeudy back. Between Jeudy, Sutton, and Noah Fant, they have a pretty nice set of weapons here. And I think this will be a game that they're probably going to be in a negative game script. And we've seen Teddy and the Broncos willing to throw the ball a decent amount in games where they're losing. I mean, you can go back and look at, say, like this game against Las Vegas where they lost by 10 points in a high-scoring game. Teddy almost hits 50 pass attempts and gets to 25 fantasy points. So if you were able to get another game like that at 5,300, that's pretty nice. And with how tight the pricing is of late, I think that is always going to be attractive. So I like Teddy as our potential pump play at quarterback this week. Let's head over to the running back position. It is rumored that we're going to get Christian McCaffrey back this week. So if that happens, Christian McCaffrey at 8,000 at home versus New England is going to be a jam. It'll be an automatic jam. That's way too cheap for McCaffrey. I don't think we have to worry about a wait and see week or a prove it week. They aren't going to rush him back. They already put him on IR. They proved that they were going to take this seriously, get him back to full health. So now you get him at 8,000 here coming off the IR. I think he's going to be incredibly popular in both cash games and tournaments, and rightfully so. I wonder if that will lead to lower ownership for Alvin Kamara, just because he's $200 more expensive. But Kamara at home versus Atlanta is going to be nice. You did see Mark Ingram work in a little bit yesterday, stole a few carries, got a couple screen passes, but this is obviously still Alvin Kamara's backfield. The 19 rush attempts, 4 targets, that's still right in line with the kind of workload we're hoping for from Alvin Kamara. So he's completely fine. Do not panic about Mark Ingram in town. If anything, it is good for giving him a break and making sure he can stay durable throughout the rest of the season. We mentioned that Eagles and Chargers game. Austin Eckler, I think, is going to be a fine play here at 7,900. Kind of spooked us last week being on the injury report and missing a couple practices, but he has a really nice game here again. I mean, the 10 targets, that usage is just absurd in the passing game. And Justin Jackson, the other guy in that backfield right now, he had a quad injury too. So things really thinning out for the Chargers. Dalvin Cook will be an interesting one here at 7,700, on the road at Baltimore. I'm guessing he could end up being kind of a contrarian play if people don't love that matchup. If we're targeting these high scoring games, Aaron Jones at KC, We've seen a lot of A.J. Dillon of late, but that's often in the game scripts where the Packers are controlling the game. And so if they're on the road here and trailing in Kansas City, you would think that would set up to be an Aaron Jones type of game there at 7,200. We have to mention Cordero Patterson here at 6,300. Obviously, Calvin Ridley announced on Sunday he's going to be stepping away from football for the time being. We have no idea on that timeline. That further condenses the touches and targets in this offense and makes, a play like Patterson look more attractive. Even Wayne Gallman, who was getting a few carries in that backfield, was inactive yesterday. So it's really just down to Cordero Patterson and Mike Davis. And I guess we should mention Mike Davis here at 4,700. He did have 9 attempts and 6 targets. Just with how thinned out they are at wide receiver right now, I mean, Mike Davis is probably going to be in play. If you told me with a blind item that there was a player who was going to get 10 carries and 6 targets at 4,700, I would be very interested in that. So Mike Davis, I know it seems crazy, but he is going to be in play. James Robinson is dealing with a heel injury. If for some reason he were to miss, I can't believe how gross I'm getting here so early. Mike Davis, and now I'm touting Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde at 4,900. This would strictly be if James Robinson misses. But the thing that was nice about Carlos Hyde is, we always think of him as this, 2-down plotter type running back. He had 8 targets in this game. So it seems like the coaching staff is willing to use him as the quote unquote bell cow back. So if James Robinson misses, Carlos Hyde is going to be very much in play at 4,900. Let's head back to this mid-range at running back though. By Chuba Hubbard. That's B-Y-E, not B-U-Y. Chuba Hubbard with McCaffrey coming back. Damian Harris continues to look good. He's still always a fragile guy from a projection standpoint because if the game isn't close, he can get game scripted out. I mean, you can go down to this Tampa Bay game, even this Houston game where he just really struggles. But in these games where they are in contention, he's been playing really well. It's just you look at these target totals and you can see how fragile he is as a play. So Damian Harris always going to be one of those guys that you play when he's not super popular. And if he gets popular, the risk of him getting game scripted out isn't really baked in. I think there's a lot of nice plays though in this, 5,400 to 5,900 range. Booker, we'll see how he looks tonight, but he has a really nice role with Saquon out, although Saquon could be back in another week. So that'll be interesting to see. Gaskin at home versus Miami. We just saw Darrell Henderson put up a huge line against them. And, this is just a really nice role here, 12 to 13 rush attempts, 4 to 5 targets, and that's going to look pretty good at 5,800 against one of the worst defenses in the league. Elijah Mitchell here, he's been running really well. You're not going to get any targets from him. He's literally had 0 targets in his past 2 games, but 18 attempts the past 2 games. This offensive line is good, and he's been running really efficient. 7.6 yards per carry yesterday, 137 total yards, get you that rushing bonus, and 22.7 points. So at 5,800, that doesn't look bad to me at all. Darrell Williams is playing tonight. Will be interesting to see how he looks. He kind of has the Devin Booker thing going on right now. We can project him for 8 to 10 carries, 3 to 4 targets. Nothing you're getting super excited about, except the fact that he can be the goal line back in an offense that's capable of scoring 60 points. And when they do that, he has a good chance at falling into the end zone 1 or 2 times. So Darrell Williams looks pretty nice there. And let's see, if we really want to get gross, I already mentioned Mike Davis. I already mentioned Carlos Hyde if he fills in. I think we can also mention Melvin Gordon down here at 5,200. He had 2 touchdowns in this game and still very much involved. It's basically like a 60-40 split between him and Javonte Williams, but he was getting the high value touches yesterday and got that rushing TD and a passing TD. So not too bad there for Melvin Gordon. Not much else down here. I don't know what to do with Philadelphia. Gainwell was a popular play yesterday, and he got pretty much iced by both Jordan Howard and Boston Scott. So, you would think in a game where they were losing 44-6 that the pass catching back Kenny Gainwell could get a few targets, but it just did not work out that way. And it's just too hard for any running back to be able to succeed in a three-way committee when you're not getting the goal line carries. You also have Jalen Hurts getting designed runs around the goal line. So you really are having to thread the needle to make Kenneth Gainwell work. And then I don't even want to try to guess on a Boston Scott or Jordan Howard. I mean, neither of them had huge yardage totals yesterday. They just found their way into the end zone twice each. Let's head over to wide receiver. I'm already tilting this price tag for Tyreek Hill at 7,900. It seems way too cheap. If he does anything tonight, if he just even has a classic 100 yards and a touchdown, he's going to be, 25 to 30% owned in most tournaments. Deebo Samuel just continues to ball out. He was really close to a touchdown yesterday, which would have gave him a monster game, but just churns out big plays every week. 9 targets, 6 receptions for 171 yards. He's a yards after the catch monster. He's one of those plug and play guys that you can just lock in every week and feel very, confident that he's going to have a high floor and a high ceiling. And of course, you can notice here, no Cooper Kupp on the slate. So we'll see if Devontae Adams is back, but Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel, Diggs, and also Jamar Chase, who I think is getting very close to entering that territory with Deebo, with Tyreek Hill, with Devontae Adams, is a guy you play every week. He was a little inefficient yesterday. He only had 32 yards receiving, but the targets are there. And if you were watching that game, Joe Burrow loves looking for Jamar Chase in the end zone. He dropped a pass. He was heavily involved, though, in the red zone there. Just a big play waiting to happen. So I have no problem going back to Jamar Chase here at 7,600. I mentioned Justin Jefferson being banged up. He's someone to keep an eye on here at 7,500. If for some reason he isn't fully healthy, obviously Adam Thielen at 6,900 will look pretty well. And also KJ Osborne at 3,600 is kind of interesting. Even if Justin Jefferson is completely fine, I actually think that price tag for KJ Osborne isn't bad. He only had 3 targets, but we've seen him in Conklin kind of alternate big games in good spots. So keep him on your radar. Let's see what else is catching my eye here. I think DJ Moore now is too cheap. He was 7,200 last week. His price going down 800 doesn't really check out for me, especially after he had 8 targets again. DJ Moore is who we thought he was, and I don't really know why we should be panicking on him. I think he's going to project really well. I'm guessing the cash game bros are going to be jamming DJ Moore into their lineups. We've talked a bit about that Minnesota-Baltimore game. I think Marquise Brown at 6K looks pretty nice to me here. Amari Cooper is probably going to look nice to a lot of people after he showed a good connection there with Cooper Rush. I mean, 13 targets is very nice at 5,700. He's going to project pretty well there for the Cowboys. Down here in this cheap range, we have a lot of familiar faces. T. Higgins, same price as he was last week. His targets have been really good. 6 targets, 15 targets, 6 targets. So he's going to project well, especially with how much the Bengals are throwing these days. So T. Higgins at 5,300. Jacoby Myers, this poor guy can't score a touchdown to save his life, but the targets continue to be here. 9 targets yesterday. He's always going to project well at that price point. Jerry Jeudy, I played him a lot yesterday in tournaments. Didn't quite have the game I was hoping for, but an encouraging first game back here for Jerry Jeudy. And I think in higher scoring game scripts, like we should see against Dallas, he will get more heavily involved in, what we saw hinted at in that week 1 against the Giants. I think we'll see more of that in the future. If we really scroll down here and want to get gross, I mean, they're basically begging us to play Robbie Anderson. He's down to 4,500. T's and P's to Michael Leone, who continues to play Robbie Anderson. I can't wait to find out if Leone is going to try to make us play him this week in our tilt space lineup. So that'll be interesting to see. Randall Cobb down here at 4,500. He had the 2 TDs on Thursday Night Football. Like I said, we have to see what the news is with those other Packer wide receivers. But if any combo of those guys are out again for some reason, he will project well. Jamal Agnew, man, it rips me up as a Laviska Shenault truther, but you can't deny what he's doing. He led the team in targets yesterday with 12 targets, just playing really well. There's no other way around it. Finds the end zone. So Jamal Agnew at 4,300, we have to be willing to adjust. Even when we don't want it, when we're wish casting other players to have it happen, it's not happening for Laviska right now, but it is happening for Jamal Agnew. I can't quit Rondale Moore. I love Rondale Moore. I still have been teased by that big game in week 2 where he had 27.4 fantasy points. He has a pretty low floor right now, but the 5 targets, the couple rushing attempts, he can pay off this salary at 4,200. So I'll be keeping an eye on Rondale Moore. And another guy I obviously can never quit down here at 3,900 is Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman at 3,900 in this game with a huge point total, I think will be interesting. And like I said, with Tyreek Hill mispriced and with everyone always willing to play Travis Kelce, I wonder if Mecole Hardman, is a nice kind of contrarian option down here at 3,900. Jalen Reagor was carted off the field yesterday with an ankle injury. I have no idea what his status will be, but Quez Watkins will project pretty well at 3,800 if Reagor is out. So definitely some options down here this week. We should probably also mention the Atlanta wide receivers here. I think Tajay Sharp, who led them in targets, is probably pretty interesting. At 4,200, he had 6 targets and 5 catches there and looked pretty solid. I'm curious what Russell Gage is at. Yeah, 4,900. They did price him up after he bageled yesterday, which kind of stings. You would hope that we could have maybe snuck in Russell Gage at 4,200 again. But DraftKings algorithm too sharp without Calvin Ridley. So he's going to have to be kind of a pay up to be contrarian guy at 4,900. Let's head over to tight end. A week after not having Kelce and Waller and Mark Andrews on the main slate, we do get them back here. So it's pretty interesting here, at least between Kelce and Pitts, because when you're going to look at ceiling projections, I mean, Kyle Pitts, just especially now that that Calvin Ridley's out, he's going to have insane target totals here. So I think he offers a similar ceiling to Kelce, as crazy as that sounds. And you're going to be saving $1,100 here. So Kyle Pitts at 5,900 looks nice to me. Mark Andrews in a really good spot at 5,500. It sounds like George Kittle might return to practice this week. I don't know if that means he will be ready for the game. I guess we have an update here. Kyle Shanahan saying he expects him to. So if we get George Kittle at 5,200 coming back from injury, I'll be interested in that as well. Gesicki, his price has stayed the same, but Devontae Parker coming back definitely hurt his targets. He only had 4 targets yesterday, and Devontae Parker had 12. So that definitely, the bloom is off the rose a little bit with Mike Gesicki. Some other interesting names down here. Noah Fant's price comes down $500 to $4,400. That looks good to me. Dan Arnold, man, he's playing well. He had 10 targets yesterday for the Jags. They really utilize the tight end position more than you would maybe think at first glance. So Dan Arnold's going to project well at 3,400. He kind of feels like the Ricky Seals-Jones now, where the new reality is this guy has a really good role and the price slowly ticks up, but maybe not fast enough to outpace his role. So Dan Arnold's going to project well again this week. I'm trying to see if I can unearth anything down here in the dumpster for you guys. Maybe Conklin at 3,000. I think that's going to be fine. He played decent last night, 7 targets there. So 7 targets at 3,000 is certainly serviceable. And I'm scrolling. I don't have anything else down here for you. Once we enter the territory where they're all listed alphabetically, that's when we've ran out of plays. Let's see if I can muster up any defensive takes for you guys this week. I always like to see if anything jumps out here right out of the gate. Chiefs at home versus the Packers at 2,300 looks solid to me. The Browns versus the Bengals looks solid to me. Let's see here. The Panthers at home versus Mac Jones looks good. Giants at home versus Derek Carr should be fine. So we actually have some decent cheap options up here on the higher end. Patriots at Carolina for 4,100 seems a little too rich for my blood. Bills at Jacksonville, that could work. Broncos at home versus Teddy Bridgewater. So seems like another week to pay down at defense, which is generally the case. So that is our first look here. I'm Peter Overzet. You guys can always find my content over on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Peter Overzet. I do lineup reviews of my GPP teams on Mondays. I do strategy shows on Friday where I talk to the best tournament players in the world and learn about their process. And then on Sunday mornings, I do a cram for the main slate. In addition to those, I do showdown crams on Monday and Thursday nights. I use the Run the Sims tools to help us figure out who is popping in the 10,000 simulations. I compare those to ownership and then try to identify the best leverage plays for every slate. You can sign up for Run the Sims with promo code Pete. We'll get you 10% off. It also gets you access to a private channel in my Discord, the Deposit Kingdom Discord. So if you're interested in joining that, just hit me up on Twitter in Discord. I'll get you all squared away. As usual, thanks to Pat Mayo for having me. Good luck in week 9, guys.